Alicia's love for animals was not something she discovered, it was a part of her, woven into her very being from the moment she could form her earliest memories. She didn't recall a time when she wasn't drawn to the creatures around her, fascinated by their movements, their sounds, and the way they seemed to communicate in a language she couldn't quite understand but felt compelled to learn. Her connection to them was instinctual, almost sacred, and it shaped the foundation of who she would become. Her childhood home sat on the edge of a quiet suburban neighborhood, where the streets were lined with modest houses and neatly trimmed lawns. To Alicia, it wasn't the houses or the gardens that mattered. It was the small pockets of wilderness tucked away between them, the patches of overgrown grass and clusters of trees where animals would wander in and out of view. She spent hours exploring these hidden corners, crouching low to observe a rabbit nibbling on clover, or lying still in the grass to watch a bird gather twigs for its nest. Her parents, while not particularly fond of animals themselves, recognized early on that Alicia's fascination was something more than a passing interest. They often found her in the backyard, carefully cradling a caterpillar or watching ants carry tiny crumbs back to their hill. When she was 3, they brought home a golden retriever puppy named Max, and the bond that formed between Alicia and Max was immediate and unbreakable. The dog became her constant companion, following her everywhere with a wagging tail and soulful eyes that seemed to mirror her own curiosity about the world. Max was just the beginning. As Alicia grew older, her world expanded to include an ever-growing menagerie of creatures, each one finding its way into her life through some twist of fate. She brought home stray cats she found wandering the neighborhood, their matted fur and cautious eyes softening under her gentle care. She nursed an injured sparrow back to health after it flew into the window of their living room, her small hands trembling as she carefully wrapped its wing in a makeshift bandage. Even the occasional turtle or frog found sanctuary in her presence, though she always released them back into the wild once they had healed. By the time Alicia was in elementary school, her reputation as the neighborhood animal lover was well established. Parents called her when their children brought home an injured bird or found a nest of abandoned kittens. Neighbors who had never spoken to her parents before would knock on their door, a shoebox in hand containing some small creature in need of care. Alicia never hesitated, her heart breaking at the sight of an animal in pain but determined to do whatever it took to help. Her room became a makeshift animal hospital with cardboard boxes serving as temporary homes for her patients and shelves lined with jars of food, medicine, and makeshift supplies. Her parents, though supportive, often wondered where her boundless energy for animals came from. Neither of them had grown up around pets, and they didn't share Alicia's enthusiasm for bringing strays into their home. Still, they couldn't deny the spark they saw in her whenever she was around animals, the way her eyes lit up and her voice softened, the way she seemed to know exactly what each creature needed. They encouraged her passion in small ways, buying her books about wildlife and taking her to the local zoo, though they often joked that their house was starting to resemble one. As Alicia entered middle school, her love for animals became more than just a hobby, it was a driving force that shaped her identity. She read every book she could find about veterinary care, wildlife rehabilitation, and animal behavior, devouring the information with a hunger that rivaled her love for the animals themselves. She spent her allowance on supplies from the pet store, stocking up on everything from flea treatments to syringes for feeding baby animals. Her walls were covered in posters of exotic creatures, and her desk was cluttered with notebooks filled with sketches and notes about the animals she encountered. Her bond with animals extended beyond the strays and pets she cared for. Alicia had an uncanny ability to connect with creatures that others deemed untamable. She spent hours at a local stable, learning to ride horses and earning the trust of even the most skittish mares. The stable's owner, a gruff man named Mr. Hargrove, was initially skeptical of the young girl who begged for a chance to work with his horses. But it didn't take long for him to see that Alicia had a gift. She moved with a quiet confidence that put the animals at ease, her hands steady and sure as she brushed their coats or cleaned their hooves. Alicia's time at the stable became one of the most formative experiences of her youth. She learned the importance of patience and perseverance, of listening to the subtle cues animals gave and responding with empathy. It was there that she first witnessed the profound bond between humans and animals, a bond built on trust and mutual respect. She saw it in the way the horses nickered softly when she approached, their large eyes following her movements with a calm curiosity. She felt it in the way they leaned into her touch, their powerful bodies relaxing under her care. By the time Alicia reached high school, her path was clear. While her classmates dreamed of becoming doctors, lawyers, or athletes, Alicia knew with absolute certainty that she wanted to dedicate her life to animals. She threw herself into her studies, excelling in biology and volunteering at the local animal shelter on weekends. The shelter was a chaotic, noisy place, filled with barking dogs and the occasional meow of a cat, but Alicia thrived in the chaos. She found joy in the small victories, watching a scared, emaciated dog wag its tail for the first time or helping a shy kitten find its forever home. Her work at the shelter only deepened her resolve. She saw firsthand the suffering that animals endured, often at the hands of neglectful or abusive owners. It broke her heart, but it also fueled her determination to make a difference. She knew that animals couldn't advocate for themselves, that they relied on people like her to protect and care for them. It was a responsibility she didn't take lightly, and it became the driving force behind everything she did. Alicia's passion didn't go unnoticed. Teachers, neighbors, and shelter staff alike marveled at her dedication, often commenting that she had a gift. But for Alicia, it wasn't about talent or recognition, it was about the animals. They were her purpose, her calling, and she couldn't imagine a life without them. As she prepared to graduate high school and take the next step toward becoming a veterinarian, Alicia felt a deep sense of gratitude for the journey that had brought her to this point. Every stray she had nursed back to health, every late night spent studying veterinary manuals, every moment spent with Max, the horses, or the shelter animals had shaped her into the person she was. She carried those experiences with her, each one a reminder of why she had chosen this path and the difference she hoped to make. Looking back, Alicia realized that her connection to animals had always been about more than just care. It was about understanding, about seeing the world through their eyes and finding a sense of kinship in their vulnerability and resilience. They had taught her to be patient, to listen, and to love without conditions. And as she stood on the threshold of her future, she knew that no matter where her journey took her, she would carry those lessons with her, a constant reminder of the life she was meant to lead. Alicia's journey into veterinary medicine was as natural as the rhythm of her own heartbeat. From the moment she set foot on the campus of her veterinary college, she knew she was exactly where she was meant to be. The sprawling green lawns bustling with students carrying stacks of textbooks, and the faint hum of life emanating from the on-site animal hospital felt like a gateway to a future she had dreamed of for years. This wasn't just a career for Alicia, it was a calling, a profound and undeniable purpose that had guided her every step since childhood. The coursework was rigorous, more demanding than anything she had faced before. Days began before dawn, often spent in lectures on anatomy, physiology, and pharmacology, followed by long hours in the laboratory or the hospital's treatment rooms. Alicia found herself memorizing charts of skeletal systems and organ structures, her desk littered with color-coded notes and well-thumbed reference books. The sheer volume of information was overwhelming at times, but it didn't discourage her. If anything, the challenges only deepened her resolve. Each late night spent studying felt like a step closer to the life she wanted, the life she had worked so hard to achieve. Practical experience was where Alicia truly came alive. The first time she donned a white coat and stepped into the hospital's exam room, her pulse quickened, her heart thrumming with a mixture of excitement and trepidation. She vividly remembered her first patient, a scrappy terrier with a fractured leg. The dog's eyes were wide with pain and fear, but Alicia's gentle touch and soothing voice worked magic. She cradled the tiny animal with a tenderness that belied her nerves, the textbook knowledge in her mind merging seamlessly with the instinct that had always guided her interactions with animals. Her professors took note of her empathy and precision. Alicia wasn't just technically skilled, she had an uncanny ability to connect with her patients, to calm their anxiety and earn their trust. It was a gift that set her apart, one that earned her praise not only from her instructors but also from the grateful pet owners who saw how their animals responded to her. She thrived under the mentorship of seasoned veterinarians, eagerly absorbing their knowledge and techniques while honing her own skills. The transition from student to practicing veterinarian was exhilarating. After graduating at the top of her class, Alicia secured a position at a small but reputable veterinary clinic in the heart of a close-knit community. The clinic, with its cheerful blue exterior and welcoming staff, felt like a second home from the moment she walked through its doors. It was a place where the love for animals was palpable, where every corner buzzed with the energy of healing and care. No 2 days at the clinic were ever the same. Mornings might begin with routine vaccinations for a pair of excitable golden retriever puppies, their tails wagging furiously as they wriggled in their owner's arms. The afternoon could bring the heart-stopping urgency of an emergency surgery, a cat that had swallowed a foreign object or a dog hit by a car. Alicia approached each case with the same level of focus and compassion, whether it was a simple checkup or a life-saving procedure. To her, every animal mattered. Every life was precious. She quickly became a favorite among the clinic's clients. Word spread through the community about the young veterinarian who treated every patient as if they were her own. Pet owners trusted her, not only for her expertise but for the way she took the time to listen, to explain, to reassure. Alicia understood that veterinary care wasn't just about the animals, it was about the people who loved them. She often found herself sitting beside anxious owners, holding their hands as she explained a diagnosis or comforted them through difficult decisions. One case that stayed with her involved an elderly woman named Mrs. Jenkins and her aging poodle, Bella. Bella had been Mrs. Jenkins' companion for over a decade, a constant source of comfort after her husband passed away. When Bella began showing signs of advanced kidney disease, Mrs. Jenkins was heartbroken. Alicia spent countless hours discussing treatment options, crafting a care plan that would give Bella the best quality of life possible. She made home visits, bringing medication and supplies, and often stayed long after her shift to ensure Bella was comfortable. When Bella passed away peacefully one autumn evening, Alicia was there, holding Mrs. Jenkins' hand as tears rolled down both their faces. It was moments like these that solidified Alicia's belief in the importance of her work. She wasn't just healing animals, she was supporting the bonds between them and their humans, bonds that often carried more love and meaning than words could express. The clinic also became a place of growth for Alicia. She learned to navigate the challenges of the profession, the heartbreak of losing a patient, the frustration of seeing animals mistreated or neglected, the emotional toll of having to euthanize a beloved pet. She developed coping mechanisms, leaning on her colleagues for support and finding solace in the victories, no matter how small. Every wagging tail, every purring cat, every moment of joy she witnessed reminded her why she had chosen this path. Alicia's work wasn't limited to the confines of the clinic. She was passionate about education and advocacy, frequently volunteering her time to host workshops on responsible pet ownership or visiting local schools to teach children about animal care. She became an active participant in spay and neuter drives, traveling to underserved areas to provide free or low-cost veterinary services. These outreach efforts expanded her understanding of the challenges animals and their owners faced, deepening her commitment to making a difference. Her dedication did not go unnoticed. Local newspapers featured stories about her work, and the clinic received glowing reviews from grateful clients. Alicia, however, never sought recognition. Her satisfaction came from the moments of connection, the trust in an animal's eyes, the relief in a pet owner's smile, the knowledge that she was making even a small difference in the world. Despite the demands of her career, Alicia made time for her own animals. Max, her golden retriever, remained a steadfast companion, his graying muzzle a reminder of the years they had shared. She adopted a pair of stray cats who had been abandoned near the clinic, naming them Jasper and Luna. Her evenings were often spent in their company, the soothing rhythm of their purring a balm for the stress of her day. Life at the clinic was not without its challenges. Alicia faced difficult decisions and moments of doubt, times when the weight of her responsibilities felt overwhelming. But through it all, she remained steadfast, driven by the same passion that had guided her since childhood. She knew that every struggle, every sleepless night, was worth it. Because for Alicia, being a veterinarian wasn't just a job, it was a way of life, one that brought her closer to the creatures she loved and to the people who cherished them. As the years went on, Alicia's career continued to evolve. She dreamed of opening her own practice one day, a place where she could combine cutting-edge medical care with the compassionate approach that defined her work. She envisioned a clinic that would serve not only pets but the community, a space where education and advocacy went hand in hand with treatment and care. It was a dream that kept her moving forward even on the hardest days. Through every challenge and triumph, Alicia's love for animals remained at the heart of everything she did. It was a love that had carried her from a curious child nursing stray kittens to a skilled veterinarian changing lives. And as she looked ahead to the future, she knew that her journey was far from over. There were still so many lives to touch, so many creatures to care for, And Alicia was ready for all of it, her heart open and her hands steady, ready to embrace whatever came next. The day Alicia met Eric began like any other at the clinic. The waiting room buzzed with a familiar chaos, wagging tails, nervous meows, and the hum of quiet conversations between pet owners. Alicia was in her element, moving with practiced ease from one patient to the next, her white coat swishing as she knelt to greet a boisterous Labrador and soothe the jittery kitten. Her work days were demanding, but they were also deeply fulfilling. Each animal she treated felt like a small victory, a reminder of why she had chosen this path. She had just finished examining a curious parrot with an attitude to match its bright feathers when she heard a soft commotion near the front desk. A low, pained whimper reached her ears, tugging at her heart. Alicia turned and saw a man standing near the entrance, holding a large border collie in his arms. The dog's paw dangled awkwardly, clearly injured, and its eyes darted nervously around the room. The man's expression mirrored the dog's unease, his brow furrowed in concern as he murmured soothing words. Alicia approached quickly, her gaze shifting between the man and the dog. "Let's get her into an exam room," she said gently, gesturing toward the back. The man nodded, his relief palpable as he followed her. Alicia's practiced eye took in his weathered boots, the faint smell of hay clinging to his jacket, and the calloused hands that cradled the dog with a tenderness that belied their rough exterior. He moved with quiet strength, his focus entirely on the animal in his arms. Once inside the room, Alicia began her examination, her movements calm and deliberate as she assessed the injury. The border collie, whom the man introduced as Ruby, flinched at first but soon relaxed under Alicia's soothing touch. She spoke softly to the dog, her voice a steady stream of reassurance, and Ruby's tail gave a tentative wag. Alicia smiled, her heart warming at the sight. The man watched her intently, his hands fidgeting slightly as he hovered near the table. "It's a minor sprain," Alicia said after a careful examination. "Nothing broken, just some swelling. With rest and a little care, Ruby will be good as new." The man exhaled deeply, a wave of relief washing over him. "Thank you," he said, his voice low and steady, tinged with genuine gratitude. It was the first time Alicia had really looked at him, and she was struck by the quiet sincerity in his expression. His dark eyes held a depth that seemed to reflect years of experience, of hard work and quiet resilience. As Alicia wrapped Ruby's paw in a clean bandage, they began to talk. He introduced himself as Eric, a farmer who lived just outside the city. He explained how Ruby had injured herself chasing after a stray goat, his tone carrying a mix of exasperation and affection. Alicia found herself smiling at his stories, drawn to the way he spoke about his animals with such genuine care. He wasn't just a farmer, he was a caretaker, someone who understood the bond between humans and animals in a way that resonated deeply with her. Eric started visiting the clinic more frequently after that day, sometimes with Ruby, other times with one of the other animals from his farm. Each visit brought more conversation, more laughter, and an unspoken connection that grew stronger with each interaction. Alicia found herself looking forward to his visits, her heart lifting whenever she saw him walk through the door. He had a way of grounding her, of making her feel seen in a way she hadn't realized she needed. One evening, after a particularly hectic day at the clinic, Eric invited Alicia to visit his farm. "You've spent so much time patching up my animals," he said with a wry smile. "I think it's only fair you see where they come from." Alicia hesitated for a moment, her natural reserve urging her to keep her professional and personal lives separate. But there was something about Eric's quiet confidence, his steady presence, that made her say yes. The farm was everything Alicia hadn't realized she was longing for. Nestled in a wide valley surrounded by rolling hills, it felt like a world apart from the noise and busyness of the city. The air was filled with the earthy scent of hay and soil, and the sounds of animals drifted through the breeze, horses nickering in the distance, goats bleating playfully, chickens clucking contentedly as they scratched at the ground. Eric gave her a tour, his voice tinged with pride as he showed her the various parts of the farm. There was a barn filled with neatly stacked bales of hay, a paddock where horses grazed lazily, and a vegetable garden bursting with vibrant greens and reds. Everywhere Alicia looked, she saw evidence of Eric's hard work and dedication. But it wasn't just the farm itself that captivated her, it was the way Eric moved through it, the ease and familiarity with which he tended to the animals and the land. This was his sanctuary, his life's work, and he had invited her into it. Alicia felt a sense of peace on the farm that she hadn't experienced in years. There was no rush, no pressure, just the quiet rhythm of life unfolding as it always had. She found herself drawn to the horses in particular, their powerful forms moving gracefully across the pastures. Eric introduced her to Thunder, a striking black stallion with an air of quiet majesty. Alicia ran her fingers through his thick mane, marveling at the softness of his coat and the intelligence in his eyes. It was a moment of connection that felt almost sacred, a reminder of why she had fallen in love with animals in the first place. As the sun dipped lower in the sky, casting a golden glow over the fields, Eric and Alicia sat on the porch of his farmhouse, sipping lemonade and watching the horizon. Their conversation flowed easily, touching on everything from their childhoods to their dreams for the future. Alicia shared stories of her early days rescuing strays and her journey to becoming a veterinarian. Eric spoke of inheriting the farm from his grandfather, of the challenges and rewards of maintaining it, and of his hope to one day expand it into a sanctuary for rescued animals. It was in these quiet moments that Alicia realized how much Eric had come to mean to her. He wasn't just a client or a friend, he was someone who understood her in a way few others did. Their shared love for animals, their mutual respect for hard work, and their appreciation for life's simple joys created a bond that felt as natural and inevitable as the changing seasons. Their relationship blossomed slowly, built on a foundation of trust and mutual admiration. Alicia began spending more weekends on the farm, helping Eric with chores and getting to know the animals. She loved the way he treated each creature with care, speaking to them as if they were old friends. She admired his patience, his kindness, and the quiet strength that seemed to radiate from him. When Eric proposed, it felt like the natural next step. They were standing in the pasture at sunset, the sky painted in hues of orange and pink, with thunder grazing nearby. Eric held out a simple silver ring, his eyes filled with a mix of hope and certainty. Alicia didn't hesitate. She knew, in her heart, that this was where she belonged, not just on the farm, but with Eric. He was her partner in every sense of the word, someone who shared her values, her dreams, and her love for the world they were building together. Their wedding was a small, intimate affair held under the open sky. Friends and family gathered on the farm, the fields dotted with wildflowers and the air filled with the soft sounds of nature. Even the animals seemed to sense the importance of the day, standing quietly as Alicia and Eric exchanged vows. It was a celebration of love, not just between two people but between them and the life they had chosen, a life filled with purpose, connection, and the simple beauty of living in harmony with the world around them. As Alicia looked into Eric's eyes, her hand in his, she felt a sense of completeness she had never known. This was her future, her home, and her heart. And as they walked hand in hand back toward the farmhouse, she knew that their story was only just beginning. Together they would face whatever challenges came their way, united by their love for each other and the animals that had brought them together. Alicia's life on the farm began like the slow unfolding of a story she'd always dreamed of, but never quite believed would be hers. The farmhouse, nestled in the wide embrace of a green valley, became her sanctuary. It wasn't just a place to live, it was a living, breathing part of her new life. Its wooden beams creaked under her feet, whispering tales of generations past. The front porch, weathered and welcoming, offered a panoramic view of the rolling hills that stretched into the horizon. She loved to sit there in the mornings, a cup of coffee warming her hands, watching the mist rise from the fields as the sun began its ascent. The days on the farm were demanding but satisfying. From the moment the sun peeked over the hills, the rhythm of life was dictated by the needs of the animals and the land. Eric, already well into his routines by the time Alicia stepped outside, would greet her with a warm smile and a quick update on the day's priorities. Together they tackled the endless tasks that came with running a farm. Feeding the animals, repairing fences, harvesting crops. It was work that left her muscles aching but her heart full. The animals became Alicia's companions and teachers, each with its own personality and quirks. The chickens were a constant source of entertainment, clucking and squabbling over every scrap of feed she scattered. The goats, with their mischievous tendencies, often tested her patience by escaping their pen or nibbling on things they shouldn't. But it was the horses that held a special place in her heart. Their strength, grace, and quiet intelligence captivated her, and she spent hours in the paddock brushing their coats, whispering to them as though they could understand every word. Thunder, the black stallion who had first drawn her attention during her visits to the farm, became her closest companion among the animals. There was a quiet bond between them, forged in the countless moments they spent together. Alicia loved to run her fingers through his thick mane, feeling the warmth of his body and the steady rise and fall of his breath. When she rode him through the open fields, the wind rushing past her and the ground blurring beneath them, she felt an unparalleled sense of freedom, a reminder of why she had chosen this life. Marriage to Eric brought its own set of joys and challenges. Their relationship, built on a foundation of mutual respect and shared values, deepened as they navigated the realities of running a farm together. Eric's calm demeanor and steady hands balanced Alicia's more impulsive tendencies, creating a partnership that felt both natural and strong. They laughed together over the absurdities of farm life, like the time a particularly stubborn goat managed to get its head stuck in the fence 3 times in one afternoon. They leaned on each other during the harder moments when a sick animal needed round-the-clock care or a sudden storm threatened their crops. The farmhouse itself became a symbol of their life together. Its cozy, lived-in feel reflected their shared efforts to make it a home. Alicia added personal touches to every room: soft curtains that swayed in the breeze, shelves lined with books and small trinkets, and photographs of their favorite moments. Eric, who loved to work with his hands, spent weekends building furniture or fixing the things that always seemed to need repair. Together, they transformed the farmhouse into a space that felt uniquely theirs. Evenings were a time of quiet connection. After the day's work was done, Alicia and Eric often sat on the porch, watching the sun dip below the hills and cast the fields in hues of gold and pink. The air would cool as the stars began to emerge, and they'd talk about everything and nothing: plans for the future, memories from their past, or simply the beauty of the night around them. On colder nights, they stayed inside, the crackling fire in the hearth casting a warm glow over the room as they curled up together on the couch. The farm, though idyllic in many ways, was not without its challenges. Nature was both their ally and their adversary. Alicia learned to read the subtle signs of an approaching storm, to recognize the early warnings of a sick animal, and to adapt to the unexpected. One summer, a drought threatened their crops, forcing them to make difficult decisions about how to allocate their limited water supply. Another year, a particularly harsh winter brought heavy snow that collapsed part of the barn roof, requiring urgent repairs. Through it all, Alicia and Eric faced these challenges together. Their marriage was a partnership in the truest sense of the word, built on a shared commitment to their life on the farm and to each other. They celebrated their victories, no matter how small: a healthy foal, a bountiful harvest, or simply the satisfaction of completing a particularly grueling task. And when the days were hard, they found strength in each other, knowing that they were never alone in their struggles. Alicia's veterinary skills became an invaluable asset on the farm. When one of their cows showed signs of distress during calving, she was there to guide the process, her hands steady and her voice calm. When a litter of piglets was born prematurely, she crafted a makeshift incubator, staying up all night to ensure they survived. Her work at the clinic continued, but her time on the farm deepened her connection to the animals in a way that no textbook ever could. She understood their rhythms, their needs, and the subtle ways they communicated. It was a knowledge born not just of study but of living alongside them day after day. As the years passed, Alicia and Eric began to dream of expanding the farm. Alicia had always wanted to open a rescue center for injured or abandoned animals, and Eric shared her vision. They set aside part of their land for the project, slowly building the infrastructure they would need: fencing for enclosures, a shelter for housing the animals, and a small clinic for on-site care. It was a labor of love, one that brought them even closer as they worked toward a shared goal. The rescue center became a reality one spring. Its first residents a pair of neglected horses that Alicia had been called to assist. Watching those horses heal and thrive under their care was one of the most rewarding experiences of Alicia's life. Word spread quickly, and soon their farm became a haven for animals in need. Dogs, cats, goats, and even the occasional bird found their way to them. The community rallied around their efforts, donating supplies and volunteering their time. The rescue center became not just a place for animals to heal, but a symbol of what could be accomplished when people came together with compassion and purpose. Life on the farm was a delicate balance of hard work, love, and the simple joys that came from living close to the land. Alicia found fulfillment in the small moments: the feel of the earth under her boots, the sound of the wind rustling through the trees, and the sight of the animals she loved thriving under her care. She marveled at the cycles of nature, the way the seasons shifted seamlessly from one to the next, each bringing its own beauty and challenges. Her marriage to Eric, though not without its occasional disagreements and misunderstandings, was a constant source of strength and joy. They learned to navigate their differences, to compromise and communicate in a way that deepened their bond. Eric's quiet steadiness anchored her, while Alicia's passion and determination inspired him. Together they built a life that was as rich and vibrant as the land they tended. As Alicia looked out over the fields one evening, the sun casting its golden light across the hills, she felt a profound sense of gratitude. The farm, the animals, her work, and her marriage, they were all part of a tapestry she had woven through years of dedication and love. It wasn't a perfect life, but it was hers, and it was enough. In the quiet of that moment, surrounded by the beauty of the world she had chosen, Alicia knew she was exactly where she was meant to be. Thunder was not just another horse on the farm. He was a presence, a force, and for Alicia, a profound connection to something she couldn't entirely explain. From the moment she first laid eyes on the black stallion, he had captivated her. His coat gleamed with a richness that seemed almost unnatural, catching the sunlight like polished obsidian. His mane and tail flowed like dark rivers in the wind, and his eyes, large, expressive, and intelligent, held a depth that felt almost human. When Alicia first moved to the farm, Thunder kept his distance. He was wary of strangers, even those with kind hands and gentle voices. Eric had warned her about his temperament. Thunder wasn't aggressive, but he was proud, a creature of immense strength and independence who didn't give his trust easily. Alicia respected that. She didn't rush to win him over, understanding that trust with an animal like Thunder couldn't be forced. Instead, she observed him from afar, learning his rhythms and the unspoken language of his body. Thunder had a way of holding himself that commanded attention. When he stood in the pasture slightly apart from the other horses, his posture was regal, his head held high, as though he were surveying his kingdom. The other horses seemed to defer to him, yielding space and following his lead. He was a leader, but not through dominance. There was a quiet confidence about him, an unshakable sense of self that made others fall in line naturally. Alicia began her bond with Thunder in the simplest way possible, by being present. She spent hours in the pasture, sitting quietly in the grass while the horses grazed around her. She brought apples and carrots, offering them to the others without approaching Thunder directly. Occasionally she would catch him watching her, his ears flicking toward her even as he pretended to focus on the grass. It became a ritual of sorts, a dance of patience and curiosity. The first time Thunder came to her of his own accord was a moment Alicia would never forget. She was sitting under the shade of an oak tree, sketching the horses as they moved through the field. Thunder had been grazing at the far end of the pasture, his tail swishing lazily at flies. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, he began to move closer. Alicia pretended not to notice, keeping her gaze on her sketchpad as her heart raced. When he finally stopped in front of her, his shadow falling over her lap, she looked up to find him staring at her with those deep, enigmatic eyes. Tentatively, she extended her hand, palm up. Thunder's nostrils flared as he sniffed her fingers, his warm breath brushing against her skin. It was a small gesture, but for Alicia, it felt monumental. From that day forward, Thunder seemed to accept her presence. He no longer kept his distance, and Alicia found herself drawn to him more and more. Their bond deepened through shared moments of care. Alicia made it a habit to groom Thunder, her hands moving methodically over his coat as she worked a brush through his thick mane. She spoke to him as she worked, her voice soft and steady, recounting the events of her day or simply sharing her thoughts. Thunder listened in his own way, his ears swiveling toward her voice, his body relaxing under her touch. She found solace in those moments, a sense of peace that seemed to flow between them. Riding Thunder was an experience unlike any Alicia had ever known. He was powerful, his movements smooth and commanding as he carried her across the open fields. When she rode him, she felt a connection not just to him but to the land itself. The rhythm of his hooves against the earth, the wind whipping through her hair, and the endless horizon stretching before them made her feel alive in a way she couldn't describe. Thunder's strength and grace reminded her of the untamed beauty of the natural world, a beauty she had always sought to protect and cherish. But their bond wasn't just about the moments of beauty and calm, it was also about trust in times of uncertainty. Thunder had a keen sense of the world around him, often noticing things Alicia couldn't. He seemed to know when a storm was coming before the first clouds gathered, his body tensing and his movements growing restless. He was sensitive to changes in mood, too. On days when Alicia felt burdened by stress or sadness, Thunder would stand close to her, his large frame a comforting presence. He didn't need words to offer his support. His quiet companionship was enough. One evening, as the sun dipped low in the sky, painting the fields in shades of gold and amber, Alicia experienced a moment that cemented her connection with Thunder in a way she hadn't anticipated. She had gone to the pasture after a particularly hard day, her thoughts heavy with worries about the rescue center and the endless demands of the farm. Thunder approached her, his dark form outlined against the fading light. Without hesitation, he pressed his head against her chest, his breath warm against her skin. Alicia wrapped her arms around him, her fingers tangling in his mane as mane slipped silently down her cheeks. It was as if he understood, offering her comfort without judgment. Thunder became a symbol of resilience for Alicia. He reminded her of the importance of strength tempered by gentleness, of independence balanced with connection. Their bond was one of mutual respect. Alicia didn't try to control Thunder, and he, in turn, gave her his trust. It was a partnership, one that felt equal and profound in its simplicity. As the seasons changed, so did their relationship. Thunder began to seek Alicia out, following her as she moved through the pasture, or standing at the fence when she approached the barn. She found herself talking to him more and more, sharing her dreams and fears as though he were a trusted confidant. And in a way, he was. Thunder's presence grounded her, reminding her of why she had chosen this life, a life rooted in love, care, and a deep connection to the natural world. There were moments of challenge, too. When Thunder fell ill one winter, Alicia was consumed with worry. She stayed by his side through long, cold nights, monitoring his condition and administering treatments with meticulous care. Watching him recover, seeing the strength return to his powerful frame, was a victory that felt deeply personal. It was a reminder of the fragility of life and the importance of cherishing every moment. Thunder wasn't just a horse to Alicia. He was a friend, a teacher, and a reflection of the things she valued most. Their bond was a testament to the power of patience, empathy, and trust. In Thunder, Alicia saw a mirror of her own journey, a journey of finding strength in vulnerability, of forging connections that transcended words, and of embracing the wild, untamed beauty of life. Together they moved through the world with a quiet understanding, two kindred spirits bound by the simple yet profound act of being present for one another. The change was subtle at first, like the faint rustling of leaves before a storm. Alicia couldn't pinpoint exactly when she began to notice it, but there was an undeniable shift in the air around her. The farm, once a haven of tranquility and routine, started to feel different. It wasn't the work. The daily rhythm of feeding animals, tending the fields, and repairing fences continued as usual. It was something intangible, a creeping unease that seemed to settle in the quiet spaces between moments. It began with the mornings. The sunrise, which Alicia usually greeted with gratitude and anticipation, seemed slower, almost hesitant. The light that stretched across the hills felt muted, as though the sun itself was reluctant to rise. The birds, whose songs typically heralded the start of the day, sometimes fell silent, their absence casting an eerie stillness over the farm. Alicia brushed it off at first, chalking it up to her own imagination. But the feeling lingered, threading through her days like a faint but persistent melody she couldn't ignore. Thunder, too, seemed affected. The black stallion, usually so calm and confident, began acting differently. He would stand near the edge of the pasture, his ears flicking toward the distant tree line, as if listening for something Alicia couldn't hear. His movements grew more restless, his powerful body taut with an energy that seemed both anxious and expectant. Alicia spent extra time with him, brushing his coat and speaking to him soothing tones. But even as his breathing steadied under her touch, she couldn't shake the feeling that Thunder knew something she didn't. The weather seemed to reflect the unease. Though it was still late summer, the days felt unseasonably cool, with gray clouds often lingering overhead. The wind, which usually carried the comforting scent of hay and wildflowers, now brought a sharper, colder edge. The nights were especially unsettling. Alicia often woke in the early hours, the silence of the farmhouse pressing against her ears. Outside, the familiar sounds of the farm, the soft clucking of chickens, the occasional nicker of a horse, were replaced by a heavy stillness that made her skin prickle. One evening, as Alicia stood on the porch watching the horizon, She noticed the way the clouds seemed to gather unnaturally, forming shapes that shifted and dissolved like smoke. The fields below, usually a tapestry of green and gold, looked darker, their edges blurred as if the land itself were retreating into shadow. She wrapped her arms around herself, trying to shake the cold that seeped into her bones. Eric had been unusually quiet that day, his normally steady demeanor tinged with distraction. She wanted to talk to him about what she was feeling, but the words wouldn't come. How could she describe something she didn't fully understand? The unease wasn't confined to the farm. During her shifts at the veterinary clinic, Alicia found herself distracted, her thoughts drifting back to the ranch, even as she tended to her patients. The animals she cared for seemed more agitated than usual, their eyes wide and their movements jittery. Even Ruby, Eric's loyal border collie, had taken to pacing along the fence line, her ears pinned back and her tail low. Alicia tried to reassure herself that it was nothing, that animals were simply reacting to subtle changes in the environment. But deep down, she knew there was more to it than that. The community around them began to feel different as well. The neighbors Alicia saw at the farmer's market or the feed store spoke in quieter tones, their faces drawn with worry. She overheard snippets of conversation about strange happenings, unexplained noises in the night, livestock behaving erratically, crops failing without warning. Though no one could provide concrete answers, the stories spread quickly, weaving a web of unease that Alicia couldn't escape. One particularly vivid moment stayed with her. She had been walking through the pasture at dusk, the golden light fading into the deep blue of evening. Thunder stood near the far end of the field, his silhouette sharp against the horizon. As she approached, a sudden rustling in the nearby trees caught her attention. She stopped, her breath hitching as she scanned the shadows. The sound wasn't unusual, just the wind moving through the branches. She told herself, but it felt wrong, as though something unseen was watching her. Thunder turned his head sharply toward the noise, his ears pricked and his muscles tense. Alicia placed a hand on his neck, drawing comfort from his warmth, but the moment lingered, heavy and unresolved. The farmhouse, too, began to feel less like a sanctuary and more like a place filled with unanswered questions. Alicia often found herself pausing in the middle of a task, her attention drawn to small details she hadn't noticed before, the way the floorboards creaked, just a little too loudly, the faint flicker of light in the corner of her vision, the unsettling quiet of the attic. She tried to dismiss these observations as tricks of her mind, but they gnawed at her, adding to the growing sense that something was amiss. Eric's behavior didn't help. He was spending more time away from the farm, running errands that seemed to take longer than usual, or attending meetings he wouldn't elaborate on. When he was home, he was preoccupied, his brow furrowed and his responses curt. Alicia wanted to ask him what was wrong, to confront the distance that had grown between them, but she held back, unsure of how to bridge the gap. It wasn't like him to keep things from her, and the change in his demeanor only deepened her unease. One night, as Alicia sat by the fire, she picked up an old journal she had found in the farmhouse's attic shortly after moving in. The leather-bound book was filled with faded handwriting, the entries detailing the life of Eric's grandfather, who had owned the farm decades earlier. She had read through parts of it before, charmed by the glimpses of daily life on the farm during a different era. But now, as she flipped through the pages, she noticed something she hadn't before: entries that spoke of strange occurrences, of nights when the animals grew restless and the air felt heavy. One passage in particular stood out. "The land speaks in ways we don't always understand. Some nights I feel it more strongly than others, a presence watching, waiting. The animals sense it too. I've learned to respect it, to let it pass without interference. But it lingers. A reminder that we are not alone here." The words sent a shiver down Alicia's spine. She closed the journal and set it aside, her mind racing. Had Eric's grandfather experienced the same feeling she was now? Was there something about the farm, its history, its land, that held secrets she had yet to uncover? As the days turned into weeks, the sense of impending change grew stronger. Alicia found herself watching the horizon more often, her eyes searching for something she couldn't name. She spent more time with Thunder, finding comfort in his steady presence even as he remained on edge. The other animals seemed to cluster closer to the barn, their usual wandering patterns disrupted by an instinct Alicia couldn't fully grasp. One evening, as a storm rolled in, the first crack of thunder shook the farmhouse, rattling the windows and sending Ruby into a fit of barking. Alicia stood at the window, watching as lightning split the sky and illuminated the fields. For a brief moment she thought she saw a figure standing near the edge of the pasture, but when the light faded, it was gone. She pressed her hand against the glass, her breath fogging the pain as her heart raced. Something was coming, she could feel it in her bones. The storm passed, leaving the farm drenched but eerily quiet. Alicia stepped outside, the wet grass cool beneath her bare feet. The air smelled of rain and earth, but it carried an undercurrent of something else, something she couldn't define. Thunder stood near the barn, his head raised and his ears flicking toward the horizon. Alicia approached him slowly, her hand resting on his neck as she followed his gaze. The field stretched out before them, familiar yet foreign in the dim light of the moon. Alicia couldn't shake the feeling that the land was holding its breath, waiting for something to reveal itself. As she stood there, her hand resting on Thunder's warm coat, she felt a deep and inexplicable certainty. Whatever was coming, it would change everything.